Begin the current Daf Eruvin Daf Lamed Gimel. We begin 5 lines down at the top of the Amud. We're in the middle of a discussion from the previous Daf, which the interpretation we had to give in the halacha was dependent upon the opinion of Rebbe that regarding halacha of bein hashmashis that we weren't going to say and that's why Gemara continues in exploring that. Shiur's corresponds because of the to anytime Daf Chaim Pisham was joining us with today's Daf. Some of the things we're going to be discussing, like we said, is whether the Gzeres Chachamim of Shabbos apply during bein hashmashis. That's the machlokes we had mentioned in the previous Daf, and we're going to explore those two different opinions. The halacha of an Eruv placed in a basket on a tree. We're going to see whether that halacha, what the halacha applies in contrast to just being on the tree itself. And some of the key terms of concept we're going to apply are chaykin lahashlam. Is a unique halacha that we view something, if it has the capacity to carve out from it, we view it as if it's adding to the dimension that we're having. And the concept of good achas mechitzasa is that we view a virtual wall as if the wall is coming down. So as long as we have that area on top, we can view it as if it's coming down. So begin the current Daf. The Gemara is continuing that my Rebbe, my Rabban, with 5 lines down from the top of the Yamid, we had mentioned it on Daf Lamed Beis, we had mentioned that is there an Isur Rabbanan by bein hashmashos or not? And the reason why that's significant is because we said that the kinyan of the person's shvisa, his Eruv Tchumen, takes effect by bein hashmashos. Now that's very important because you have to be in the same place as your Eruv. Now if it's on a tree, you can't go on the tree on Shabbos. But there is an opinion that holds that that's not a problem. Why? Because it takes effect by bein hashmashos. By twilight is only a doubt. Rabbinic law, Rebbe said, and that's what we had quoted, that that's not going to be a problem because you could do Isur Rabbanan by bein hashmashos. That's what Gemara wants to explore now. It says, my Rebbe, my Rabban. What's this Rebbe Rabban you already quoted 2 times to tell me this halacha? What is this referring to? So the Gemara says like this: the time you learn the brayso, Nasane be'ilah. Okay, we're talking about the case we spoke about in the previous Daf. You put an Eruv on the tree. So says the brayso, Lamala Masar Tfachim. If it's higher than 10 Tfachim, ein Eruv Eruv, it's not going to be a valid Eruv. We explained this on the previous Daf from Rabbi Yitzchak when he explained that we had the same halacha in our Mishnah. If you recall the previous Daf, we had the same halacha in our Mishnah. We said it means where the guy wants to do his shvisa, he wants to spend Shabbos by the trunk, by the bottom, and the branch is sticking out more than Daled Amis, and it goes up. So as we said, the branch you could do on the above 10 Tvachim, you could do beneath 10 Tvachim. So that's what we said, that if it's above 10 Tvachim, it's not going to be an Eruv, because although we said you have the virtual Daled Amis around the area of the Eruv, but this is already more than Daled Amis out. Okay, that's not the main thing what we're bringing in this Gemara for, but that's the interpretation of the halach. Lamat Masar Tvachim, and it's beneath 10 Tvachim, then the Eruv Eruv, then it's going to be a valid Eruv. Like we said, because then it's in Rosh Hashanah, and you can bring it Pachas Medal Amis to where you are, it's considered Eruv Eruv b'makam echad. Now, but, interestingly, Vasalitli, you cannot take it. So even though it's beneath 10 Tvachim, you can't take it tomorrow on Shabbos if you want to eat it because you're using a tree. Now, wait a second, if you can't take it, how could it be your Eruv? That's what we explained the previous stuff. Even so, the Eruv is acquiring for you bein hashmashis, because utilizing a tree is only rabbinic isur of a shvus. And that, they did not make it decreed on bein hashmashis. So during twilight, if you want to take it, you could take it. So therefore, that's why it's not going to be a problem. And then we just call it a shvus. Any isur rabban on Shabbos and Yom Tov, we call it a shvus. So you can't take it on Shabbos, but yet it's still going to be for you in Eruv, because by bein hashmashis is all it had to do, and that bein hashmashis you were able to take it. Now, says the brayso further. Let's say b'teich shleisha. Let's say you put the Eruv on the tree within 3 Tvachim from the ground, very low down. It's over here on this bottom branch, literally on the bottom, within 3 Tvachim. So then mutzalitli, you're allowed to take it even on Shabbos. Now the reason for this is because anything less than 3 Tvachim, even on a tree, there's no gezer, because that's really called what's called aras michta. It's really considered part of the ground. As the Gemara says in the last paragraph of Tzadik Tes on the base, if the roots were 3 Tvachim high, then you can't sit in it. But within 3 Tvachim, it's considered like on the ground. You're allowed to sit on the ground. The ground is also geduli karka, right? What's the difference? The tree, we're concerned if it's a tree, but above, that's only above 3 Tvachim. Within 3 Tvachim, you're allowed to go ahead and take it. Now continues the brayso, and this is the part that we want to bring in. Nosanli b'kalkala. Let's say you put it on the basket. It's loy be'ilan, and you hang it on the tree. Then afilah malamasar tvachim eruv eruv. This is what we're actually going to discuss momentarily. That even if it's above 10 Tvachim, it's going to be valid Eruv. That's Divrei Rebbe. Now the Gemara later on is going to explain that the width of this tree is not 4 Tvachim. So therefore, it's not going to have the dimensions as Rosh Hashanah. So it's above 10 Tvachim, but still the Gemara is actually going to give 2 different interpretations of this halacha. But therefore, it's not going to be considered as a Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, even above 10 Tvachim, you're still in Rosh Hashanah or Carmelis, and therefore it's going to be permitted. That's the Rebbe. Now, V'chamam, they say, Kamakam sha'asa litlay, wherever you're not allowed to take it from, any Eruv Erev, it's not going to be valid there. Now, the Gemara asks, V'chamam ahei. There's two cases that Rebbe was talking about. He was talking about a regular tree, and he was talking about a basket. So which case was he talking about? The Chacham was saying that it's not going to be a valid Erev because you cannot take it. As the Gemara explains. Ilema Seifa, everything is going on the last halacha. The Rebbe said if you put it in the basket, it's going to be Erev even above 10 tefachim. And that the Rabbanan is saying, wait a second, since you cannot take it on Shabbos because you're utilizing the tree, so it's not going to be a valid Erev because the Rabbanan will go Isra Rabbanan even by Ben Hashmashais. And that's what it sounds like. It sounds like Chacham are going right after what the last thing Rebbe said. But then, Lema Kesav Rabban, should that be that Rabbanan are saying Tzadad and Asurim, that the sides are forbidden? Over here, if it's in the basket, you're not using the tree itself. If you were to take the Erev, even on Shabbos, you're using just the basket. The basket is on the side of the tree. Now, this was a machlekes, if you recall, in the Sefta Shabbos of Kubna down the base. There was an opinion that holds Tzadin as Aser. There was an opinion that held that Tzadin, the sides are mutter. So, therefore, we should say from here you see that Tzadadin are Aser. So, if that's the case, the one who holds that it's mutter should be like Yachid b'makam Rabbim, because here the Chachamim, the Rabbim that are saying, and moreover, as the way Rashi explains the Gemara's question, well, then this Mishnah should have been the support for those who rule over there that Tzadadin are Aser. How come no one brings this opinion over here? So the Gemara says, you're right, the Chacham are not going on to say, because then that would show Tzadadin Asurim, and there are those who hold Tzadadin Mutar. Now, the rather are Reisha. Obviously, the Rabban are going on the first case Rebbe was discussing. Rebbe said if you put it on the tree, so he said if it's beneath 10 tefachim, it's going to be a valid Erev, although you can't take it. On that Rabban is saying no, that even though you and the Erev are in the same place, you're both in Rishos Rabbim, but since you're not allowed to take it on Shabbos because it's a tree, so then the Chacham say you're not allowed to take it by Ben Hashmashas either because that's a doubt. We have the same Isurim on Shabbos, which is definitive, and by Ben Hashmashas it's a doubt. And therefore, that's what Rabban is saying, it's not going to be a valid Erev because you can't take it. And therefore, this is the source of the machlekes Rebbe and Rabbanan. We have quoted already twice before on previous Dafim that Rebbe says that the Erev you're allowed to take by Ben Hashmashas, so therefore it's going to be permitted as an Erev. According to Rabbanan, no. Kamakam Shasalitli, they're saying that you can't even take it by Ben Hashmashas, so therefore in the Erev, therefore they're going to hold it's not going to be a valid Erev. So that, again, that was the source of this machlekes. Really, you see this, and we quote many times. Is the Isser Ben Hashmashas of the Rabban or not? It's from here, from this machlekes that we just said regarding Lamatam and Yutfachim on the Elon itself. According to Rebbe, that's going to be a valid Erev. According to Rabban, even though you're Eruvin B'Rishus Rabbim, it's not going to work because you can't take it, you can't access it because they hold that there is an Isser Rabban by Ben Hashmashas. Now, but once we introduce the Brisa, the Gemara asks, wait a second. There's two cases that we spoke about. We talked about the case on the tree itself, like we just mentioned, which is the Reisha. Spoke about when it's in the basket. That's the case of the Sefer. What's the case of this tree? Either let's be arba. If there's no dalet tefachim over here in the width of the tree, so then makam paterhu. So then it's an exempt area because anything that's left than a width of 4, the Gemara tells us in Perek Yetzias HaShabbos that's not considered a domain by itself, and it's considered batal to Rishos Ram and to Rishos Yachid. And let's say someone is in that area between them. He's actually, as the Gemara says there in Shabbos Avav Med Aleph, someone's like he's standing on a stoop, so he's allowed to go ahead and take from the ani on the outside Rishos Rabbim or give to him, and from the Balabais and to give to him. And it's not in the Issa D'Rabbanan. So here, that even if it's above 10 tefachim, it shouldn't be Rishos Yachid because it doesn't have a width of 4 tefachim. So why are you saying that it's above 10 tefachim, it's not going to be a valid Erev? What do you mean? You could take it to Rishos Rabbim because it's a Makam Tur. Actually, some Girsas actually have the added words that have a Lamal Masar, not Mutter. That even above 10 tefachim it should be permitted. So obviously, the case of the tree cannot be talking about that it's 4 tefachim wide because that is not 4 tefachim wide because if it's not 4 tefachim, then even above 10 tefachim it should be valid. Now the this biarba, okay, fine. So if you're going to say that, it must mean that there is a width of 4 tefachim to this height of the tree that's 10 tefachim, and that's why the Reisha said that when it's lamala b'yud it's going to be aser because it's in a bona fide rishus yachid. So then kinasnu b'kalkala mayhava. So how do we understand the case that when you put in the basket, what's the difference? In other words, why at the sefer does it help when you put in a basket? But still, it's Rishos Yachid that should be forbidden. So how do we understand the contrast of the case of the Reish and the Sefer? Why putting in the basket would make it any better? If there's no 4 tefachim, how do we understand the Reisha? If there is 4 tefachim, how do we understand the Sefer? Why does it make it better if it's in the basket? So Eruvin says like this: says Reisha, this biarba. He said you're right. The Reisha is talking about where there is a width of 4 tefachim. So therefore, when it's above 10 tefachim, it's not going to be valid Erev because you're in Rishos Rabbim, the Erev is in Rishos Yachid because that's the dimensions of a private domain. Height of 10 tefachim and the width of 4 tefachim. Seifa, he explains interestingly this: the less biarba, Now, the Sefer is talking about that there's no 4 tefachim width. Now, that's why it's not Rosh Hashanah, because you're right, if it was Rosh Hashanah, then it wouldn't help you, because you wouldn't be able to carry from the basket. It doesn't make it bad. You're in Rosh Hashanah, carrying to Rosh Hashanah. Now, why do we pick a basket? Because Rebbe holds like Rabbi Yehuda, as we're going to shortly explain, who says an Eruv that's placed above 10 tefachim is not going to be a valid Eruv, even if you intended to have your shvisa above also. You're in the same place. But it has to be on the Makam Chasham, what's called Makam Arba. It has to be 4 tefachim wide. Therefore, if not for the basket, you would not have an Eruv at all on the Makam Arba. Rather, it's V'kalkola Mashli Masil Arba. It's that the basket is what's filling it to an area of 4 tefachim. So, as we're showing here in the picture, the actual tree itself does not have a width of 4 tefachim. Now, so the Gemara continues on the base and explains, so what's the understanding of this opinion of Rebbe? Rebbe Sabbalakar Meir, the Sabbalakar Yehuda. There's 2 opinions that Rebbe's going like, that you could understand the reasoning for his halacha when it's in this basket, as the case we just described, why it's going to be valid even above 10 tefachim. Sabbalakar Meir, Hozakar Meir, that he says, we had this in the first paragraph of Yerafim Beis regarding a dome, regarding the laws of mezuzah. We said chaykin lahashlim. Although you have to have an area of height of a pesach when you're putting a mezuzah, although let's say it curves like a dome, we said, but since you could carve out, we viewed already as it's adding to those dimensions. Now, so therefore here also we're going to say chaykin lahashlim. We're going to view this tree as if it's carved out together with the basket. Now, as Rashi explains, however, it's not a bona fide Rosh Hashanah, because you don't have on the bottom part of the tree a width of 4 tefachim. So although on the top you are here, what we're calling this the top, you're going to have a width of 4 tefachim, because the basket is completing it to 4 tefachim, that doesn't make it Rosh Hashanah. Only if you started to, this is Machlekes Rashi and Tais exactly, but unless it started to be a width of 4 tefachim within 3 tefachim from the ground. As the Gemara says, a paragraph Zerk and Shabbos Daf Kaf Aleph Amud Aleph, they talk about there what's called B'tzinias Demation. These are like canoes basically, that they're very narrow on the bottom, and they don't have a width of 4 tefachim. Although on the top, the boat ends up getting wider and wider the higher it gets, and it has mechitzas 10 tefachim high, still you're not allowed to carry in those boats more than 4 amas, because it's not a Rosh Hashanah. Although it's the mechitzas are 10 tefachim high and they're 4 tefachim wide on the top, but since in the bottom they're not 4 tefachim wide, it's not considered Rosh Hashanah. So it says Rashi here also by the tree, the reason is the same thing, is because here, although here it's going to be 4 tefachim and 10 tefachim high, but here on the bottom, you don't have 4 tefachim. And Rashi proves that this is the reason, because the Gemara later on says, oh, who's this like? It's not like Rabbi Yehuda. And in the Gemara in Hazayrik, in that same boat, it also says, oh, it's not like Rabbi Yehuda, where we see that's the same principle, that since on the bottom it's not 4 tefachim, so although on the top you're going to have the dimensions of Rosh Hashanah, you cannot consider this as Rosh Hashanah. So this is not a Rosh Hashanah. And that's going to be important, because if it's Rosh Hashanah, then you can't carry from the basket to where you're starting Shabbos over here on the bottom. Now, so he holds like Remeir the Chaykin Lahashlim. And the Sabbath Rabbi Yehuda, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda, because why do you need Chaykin Lahashlim for? Why? If anything, to the contrary, you wouldn't want Chaykin Lahashlim. You'd want it to be not a Rosh Hashanah. The reason why he has to have Chaykin Lahashlim is so Chaykin Lahashlim is really like somewhere in the middle. It's not making Rosh Hashanah, because you don't have on the bottom 4 tefachim wide. So therefore you don't have the problem about taking Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. But it's going to give us something else that we do need. Because for Sabbath Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi also holds like Rabbi Yehuda, that he says, being the Eruv Agab Makam Arba. You need the Eruv on the area that's 4 tefachim wide. V'leka, without the basket, you don't have a width of 4 tefachim. So there's 2 things that we're accomplishing. You need the basket together with the tree to make an area of 4 tefachim. And also, so you're going to have 4 tefachim, but you're not going to have 4 tefachim. You're going to have it this halachic 4 tefachim to make it that it's al makam arba, but it's not going to be that as if the tree is 4 tefachim wide, because if it was, you wouldn't be able to carry from this basket to where you are, because that would be taken from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. So that's how Eruvin explains the case of the Sefer. The tree itself, in the Reisha, it has a width of 4 tefachim. The Sefer doesn't, but it has a 4 tefachim together with the basket, and you can do that with Chaykin Lahashlim, and then you have both the Remeir and Rabbi Yehuda, which is what is the opinion of Rebbe. Now says Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, what's this halacha of Rabbi Yehuda that you're quoting that he says that has to be al gabin makam arba, so makam chashav? The time you learn the brayso. He says, not kari b'shusarah. Let's say you stick a pole into the public domain, v'nich Eruvin, and you put the Eruv on top of that pole. If it's gavay yud v'rechav adal, if it has a height of 10 tefachim and a width of 4 tefachim, Eruvin Eruv, it's going to be a valid Eruv. Now, although that pole is a Rosh Hashanah, and you're intending to make your shvisa Rosh Hashanah, but that's what we said. We said if you put your Eruv, in the previous stuff we said this from Rava, you have around the Eruv Dalet Amas, and the Rosh Hashanah goes up till the sky. Now, by the case of the Mishnah, if you recall, why by the tree did we say it's not going to be an Erev if it's above 10 Tvachim? That's only because the branches are going out Dalet Amas. But over here, where there's no branches, so it's very good. Even though that's a Rishus HaYachid, you're in the Rishus HaYachid if you're in the Skav and Lishbis Lamata. That's the halach. Now, Vim Lav, let's say it doesn't have this, then Ein Eruv Erev, it's not going to be an Erev. Now, as Rashi explains, the assumption right now, these enigmatic words of if not, it's not an Erev, sounds like that. What does it mean, if not? If it's not one of the two criteria you mentioned, if it's not 10 Tvachim high, or it's not 4 Tvachim high, it's not going to be a valid Erev. Therefore, the Gemara asked on this part of, let's say, when you're saying if it's not 10 Tvachim high, I'll drop it to the contrary. To the contrary, for sure it should be a valid Erev, because if it's not 10 Tvachim high, he's in the Rishus Harabim, and the Erev is in the Rishus Harabim. So why would you say that if it's not, doesn't have these two criteria, it's not going to be a valid Erev? To the contrary, then for sure it should be a valid. So the Gemara Ella, rather, you're right. This V'im Lav that we're saying is not going on the height, it's going on the width. Only on that of the two variables. This is what the Bryce is saying. Gevaya Sarah, that if it's 10 Tvachim high and you put on the top, you need that the top should have a width of Arba, of 4 Tvachim. And this is the source of that opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, because that's going to be a Makom Chashav, a significant place of putting down your Erev. Then it's going to be a valid Erev. Now, the fact that he's in Rishus Harabim and the Erev is in Rishus HaYachid, that's not going to be a problem, like we said, because if you put your Erev, you have 4 Amas in its perimeter. When we're saying V'im Lav, means to say that if the height is 10 Tvachim and it's not 4 Tvachim wide, then it's not going to be a valid Erev. Because since the height is 10 Tvachim and the Erev is not on the Makom Dalid, it's on a very small pole, that's like it's just hanging in the airspace. And therefore it's not going to be a valid Erev. That's the source of Rabbi Yehuda, who we had said, that he says has to be Makom Chashav al Gabi Makom Dalid. Now, from the inference, however, that's what we're saying, Ein Gevaya Sarah. But let's say it's not 10 Tvachim high, then Ein Tzarech Shei B'Reish Ha'Arba. Then you're right, then you don't have to have that it should have a width of 4 Tvachim. It's going to be a valid Erev, because since it's beneath 10 Tvachim from the ground, so Rashi explains it's like as if it's laying on the ground, because whatever's within 10 Tvachim, we say Klut to Kamishahun Chadami, if you recall in the beginning of Masechta Shabbos, if it's in the airspace of a Shazam, it's like it's placed down already, and therefore it's going to be like it's on the ground, it's like Al-Mokum Arba, and they're both going to be Rosh Hashanah, and then it's going to be a valid Erev. This, if we say V'im Lav, was only regarding if it's 10 Tvachim high, it does not have the width of 4 Tvachim. But if it has the width of 4 Tvachim, it's not 10 Tvachim high, of course that would be a valid Erev. Now, however, the Gemara says, come on, who is this like? Meaning, Ravina had given an answer. He said, we had a difficulty. How do you understand the advice of Rebbe? On the one hand, you said when it's above 10 Tvachim on this tree, it's not a valid Erev. Somehow it's in a basket, it's a valid Erev. Why would that be? It's above 10 Tvachim. So Ravina had answered. He says, because the Reish is talking about it has a height of 10 Tvachim and the width of 4 Tvachim. That's Rosh Hashanah. You're not in the same place. Sefer was talking about where the tree did not have a width of 4 Tvachim. It had a height of 10 Tvachim. Okay, so wait a second. But how does it work? You said, because with Chayki Kin Lahashlim, you said that if you carve it out, you said that, okay, you're going to carve it out, so there's going to be, for Rabbi Yehuda's halacha, a Makom Chashav, a width of 4 Tvachim. But it's not Rosh Hashanah. So that the basket should make it usher. Why? Because here on the bottom you said it does not have on the trunk a width of 4 Tvachim. So that's what the Gemara is saying. Come on, who's that like? Says the Gemara, like Rabbi Yehuda. This teaching is not like Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Ketana Lina Brisa. Rabbi Yehuda says this case over here. No, it's kind of Rishus Harabim. Same idea. You stick a pole into Rishus Harabim, but there's one more element over here. The Nich Beroshi Traskel. He puts on top of the pole a basket that's 4 Tvachim in its width. The Zarak, and then he throws from Rishus Harabim. Menachal Gabab, it lands on top of the basket. Chayiv, he's going to be liable. Why? He just threw from Rishus Harabim to Rishus HaYachid. Oh, wait a second. How's this Rishus HaYachid? Obviously, that even though the pole on the bottom is not 4 Tvachim wide, we're going to view this as Rishus HaYachid. Why? Since the upper part has 4 Tvachim, which is the basket, and we say good achas, we view as if the walls, the virtual walls, extending down. That's how the Gemara explains in Parakat Zayrik. Well, wait a second. That sounds not like this teaching. Because this is, you said, you have 4 Tvachim width together with the basket, and it has a height of 10 Tvachim. Why don't you say good achas? Here you have the dimensions here. Here you don't have the dimensions on the bottom. Here you're saying it's Rishus HaYachid. How come here it's not Rishus HaYachid? Obviously the teaching is not like Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara rejects it, says no. Afilatema, you could even say that Rabbi Yehuda is going to Rabbi Yehuda. Hasam over there, Hadron Mechitzasa. There, what you have the mechitzas, so the mechitzas of the basket, if you see in this picture, they're surrounding the pole, because the pole's in the middle of the basket. When you say good achas of the mechitzas of the walls of the basket to the ground, it comes out that the pole is surrounded with walls with a airspace of 4 Tvachim squared. So then there's no more problem, because this is going to be Rishus HaYachid. Hach over here in our case, loy hadra mechitzasa, you're not surrounded with walls of the basket because the basket does not surround the thickness of the tree. It's on the side of the tree. Therefore,
it should be better.
Why should be better?
Because you have a full wall going down on the right side.
Put in a full wall.
Use a tree.
So Rashi says, Rashi, you could say it, but Rashi says, the principle is the main idea is the next point, which you wrote over here, is that, so what are you going to have to do? When you're going to say good achis for it to come down, you're still going to have to say chikin lahashlam, that you still have to carve out the tree, and to combine the basket together with the tree. Now, two virtual principles we don't say. So therefore, you're right. Of course, as you're asking that, it's going to be even better. But the thing is, here, all you need is one virtual principle, because you already got the walls. Here, you're going to have to say Chagim Lahashlim, which is a virtual principle, and then you have the Good Achim, which is another virtual principle. Two virtual principles you don't say, and therefore, that's why it's not going to be a valid Eruvin, and therefore, that could even be like a Bisa B'Yehuda. Now, going back to Amad Aleph, Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar, he says that we had asked a question. We want to understand the Brisa. On the one hand, the Reisha says if it's on the tree above 10 tefachim, it's not going to be valid. Then you said somehow it's in the basket above 10 tefachim, it's going to be valid. Why? You're taking from Rishos Yarab to Rishos Rab. So we had answered, we said, oh, really? There's no width of 4 tefachim together with the basket, it's going to be width of 4 tefachim. On that, the Gemara brings a different approach. Rabbi Yirmiyah says that no, actually the Reish and the Seifa are both talking about that the tree has a width of 4 tefachim. So then the question is, wait a second. It has a width of 4 tefachim, and it's the height of 10 tefachim. It's Rosh Hashanah. How does it help that it's in the basket? You're still carrying from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. It's not in the same domain. So he says, no, Shani Kalkala, basket is different. Hayel, since it's very long, and you could bend it, and you're just bending, you're not gonna rip it out from where it's hanging. All you have to do is bend one end of it until that you could bring it within 10 tefachim, and then you could take your Eruv. So therefore, it is that, Taisa says, like it's a Carmelist, but the point is, it is within your domain. Now, Taisa has a difficulty. He says, he brings from Rabbeinu Shmuel, that this Amor most holy Rabbi that's going to set the Shabbos of Tzachayim and Allah was called Eged Klishmei Eged. That since something is still attached to its original place, it's still going to be like it's still there. Because the problem is that this is in Rosh Hashanah and you're bending it down. Wait a second, aren't you doing Haitzah, taking it down from Rosh Hashanah to a different domain? So let's say Rosh Hashanah. No, because you say Eged Klishmei Eged, it's still attached, some of it to here. All you have to do is tilt one end of it. So you're not really doing Haitzah from the basket above to where it is here on the bottom. Or he says even like the Mandam Lishmei Eged, it's still not going to be Issa Haitzah, because when you're bending it, again, like we wrote over here, it's still taking it to a Carmelist, which is only rabbinically forbidden. And we're going like Rabbi holds, the rabbinic prohibitions are not a problem by Ben Hashmashas. So there is no problem about Haitzah per se. But again, you could access it. So even though it's 4 tefachim wide, it is Rosh Hashanah, but it's still considered it's in your domain because all you have to do is bend it and bring it within 10 tefachim. So it is considered that it's in your Rishos. And therefore, that's why, according to Rabbi, if it's a basket, it's okay because the basket could be tilted. Now the Gemara says, Yasser Rapapa v'kamalash ma'it Rapapa, and we're saying about this teaching of Yirmiyah. And Esrei Rav Bar Shaval Rapapa. He asked him from a Mishnah later on, Daf Lamed Chesed Beis. The Mishnah there is talking about when Yom Tiv is on Friday, and then you have Shabbos. And you want to make an Erev Tchumen for both days, for Yom Tiv and Shabbos, or Friday and Shabbos. So says the Mishnah, so what should the person do? What he should do is as follows. Malicha Berishin, on the first day, meaning on Erev Yom Tiv, he should go to his Tchum of 2,000 Amas. And as Rashi points out, they're doing it through an agent, because it was by himself. He wouldn't have to do bread to acquire his Shvisa, because just by sitting there, he already acquires that place. But we're talking about he's sending with an agent. So he sends the guy there for the first day of Yom Tiv, right before Yom Tiv, and the person waits there until it gets dark, until he acquires the Erev. And then the Shliach goes, and if he wants to, he takes the Erev and he brings it back with him, because if he's going to leave it over there, maybe he's going to get lost, and then they're not going to have the 2 meals worth anymore to make the Erev the following day. Because as the Mishnah says, that if let's say the Erev gets eaten up on the first day, so it's a valid Erev for the first day, like we said in the previous stop. We had someone that asked the question, we said, yeah, you had it by Ben Hashmaz, it's going to be valid Erev, but it's not going to be Erev for the next day. You want to make Erev for 2 days. So you bring it back home. Then for the next day, on Yom Tiv, which is Friday, you go back, and Basheni, on the second day, which is now Erev Shabbos, which is now the first, which is Yom Tiv, Machshechalav, again, you wait until it gets dark, and then you eat your Erev over there if you want to, because you can't bring it back anymore because it's already Shabbos. And then Uvolai, and then you come back, and then you just made an Erev as an agent for this guy for Friday, which is Yom Tov, and for Shabbos. Now, let's say Yom Tov is after Shabbos. Let's say Shabbos is the first day and Yom Tov is Sunday. So then, obviously, you would have to leave it over there on Erev Shabbos. You couldn't bring it back because it's Shabbos. And next day you come back and you see. If it's still there, then you wait there, and it'll be Erev for the second day. If it got lost, you'll have to sit in your house because it's not going to be a valid Erev. Now, one thing is that we're learning over here in this Mishnah is that someone who makes an Erev has to bring it to the end of 2,000 Amas, which is essentially basic halacha that according to Rashi, it has a whole different interpretation, but we're just trying to say the simple halacha that when you bring in an Erev, you have to bring it there to the end of 2,000 Amas. Now, as you continue to have Lamed Daled and Aleph, the Gemara asks, wait a second, Amai, why do you have to actually bring it there? To make it into a halacha of an Erev, namely you should say, Kivin Dibai, if you wanted to, Amtu Yimatzi Mamtile. It's Yom Tov. We said this, let's say 2 days Yom Tov, it's Friday and Shabbos. If you want to, you could bring it over there. It's Yom Tov, you're allowed to carry. Now, so you should say, even though you didn't bring it over there, you should say, Command Amtai, it's like we brought it over there. Meaning, you just said in Rabbi Yirmiyah, it's an interesting comparison that the Gemara is asking the question. Rabbi Yirmiyah said, if you want to, you could bend the basket, you could. So therefore, even though it's still actually right side up, and it's in Rosh Hashanah, you said, oh, but you could tilt it. You could tilt it, and it's still like, you're not doing any hitzah, like we said, because either it's Eged Kli or Carmelis, whatever it is, but you could tilt it. Oh, so then we view it already as if it's in Rosh Hashanah, since you could tilt it. So wait a second, the same thing over here. Over here, that the truth is that we said the Eruv is like we said, he's Rosh Hashanah, the Eruv is Rosh Hashanah. But you said you could tilt it. So what's the difference if V'yochel and Taisa that you could tilt the basket, or V'yochel Avir that you could bring the Eruv? And Rashi says, so why are we picking specifically this Mishnah of Yom Tov and Shabbos? So Rashi says, because there was no other explicit Mishnah that really spoke about the halachas of Eruv explicitly like this Mishnah. We really didn't need the case of Yom Tov and Shabbos. So don't get confused. I'm saying in general, when you're making the Eruv, at that point in time, you could have brought it. So if you could have brought it, so that's all you need to have. So why do you actually have to bring the Eruv over there? You're saying v'yachal and taisa. So say v'yachal aviyah. You say that you could have brought it. Why is it any different? Since you could, we should view it as if it was done. So then why do you ever have to bring an Eruv to the makom of the Alpayim Amma? You could, so fine, you could. Now the way Taisa says that even more, I'm saying, but Yom Tov you could bring it. So that's the Gemara's question. So I remember Zeri has an interesting answer. He says, this to Drabban require everyone who's making Eruv to actually bring the Eruv to the place of where he's making his Makom Shvisa is a Gezer. You're right, it's rabbinic decree. What's rabbinic decree? Shum Yom Tov Shechali is Achra Shabbos. If Shabbos is the first day and Yom Tov is the second day, for Yom Tov, if you wanted to bring it on Shabbos for your Eruv for the second day of Yom Tov, which is on Sunday, you wouldn't be able to bring it over there because you can't carry on Shabbos. You would have to bring it from Erev Shabbos. But if you would say normally, let's leave the Erev in the house because we have the principle of Hayel, that we could go ahead and rely on it and say, oh, we could have brought it so it's going to work. So then in such a case, a person's going to rely on it. And they say, oh, I have the Erev in my house. That's all. The rabbis don't require anything more to bring it over there. The problem is, there in that case, you don't have a Hayel. The Erev for Matzah Shabbos, for then where it has to be Ben Hashmash, it's Shabbos. You couldn't have brought it over there. Because in that case, they said in every case, you have to go and bring it over there. You're right, you would say the Svara that we said from Yirmiyah, but you don't have it in one of those cases, and because of that, we said it's always that you have to actually bring it. But you're right, in principle, we would have said, and therefore, something to discuss in today's Daf and Eruvin Daf Lamed Gimel. We said, what's this Rebbe and the Rabbanim that we keep on quoting in all these cases? We keep on mentioning Rebbe and the Rabbanim. I don't know what are these two different opinions. Which is Isser Shvus, is it going to be Asr Ben Hashmashas or not? So we quoted this halacha of our Mishnah from the previous stuff, and the Bryce had just elaborated and had different variations of this. If you put it on a tree, so he said if it's above 10 tefachim, he said it's not going to be in there. But now we explained the previous stuff. That was the halacha of the Mishnah, because although you get an area of Daled Amos, we said we're talking about the branch is more than Daled Amos away. So therefore, it's not going to be invalid Eruvin because it's the Rishus HaYachid and your Rishus HaRab. If it's beneath 10 tefachim, then it's going to be a valid Eruvin. But we said you're not allowed to take it because at the end of the day, it's Shabbos. The reason why it's an Eruvin is because it's by Ben Hashmashas. We said if it's within 3 tefachim of the ground, then we said then you're even allowed to take it because that's considered like aris mechta. It's considered like part of the ground. That was the ratio. The Sefer said that if nasna b'kalkal, we said okay, same case, but let's say put it in the basket. Oh, then we had a machlekes. Now, what was the machlekes actually? It was not regarding specifically the case of the basket. The Brisa brought a machlekes. That was the case. The Rebbe says that even above 10 tvachim is going to be a valid erev. Chacham they say these words, Kamakim Shasal Litloi, in the Ruva erev. Rebbe now takes it, now make an erev. Now, so the Gemara says, it cannot be going on the sefer. Why? Because it would be going on the sefer, with the case of the basket is what's called tzadadim. If you would say it's usher, then you would be telling me tzadadim is usher, and that's machlekes elsewhere, and no one brings a raya from over here, so it's obviously not going the case of the sefer. Obviously, when we say that there's a machlekes over in the Mishnah, it's actually going on the reisha. What was the case of the reisha? Oh, if you're allowed to take it from the tree when it's beneath 10 tefachim by bein hashmashes. Everyone agrees now to take it from the tree on Shabbos. Rebbe said if it's lamatim, you're allowed to, it's going to be valid erev. But Rabbanan is saying it's not going to be valid erev. Why isn't it going to be valid erev? Because we're not allowed to take it. If you can't take it, it's not huber b'makom. So why does Rebbe hold that it's valid erev? Oh, because it's bein hashmashes that it's acquired. Bein hashmashes is Rabbanan, then it's going to take effect for you. That is the machlekes Rebbe Rabbanan. We keep on quoting if this is Rabbanan or not. It's here from this brisa. Now, but then once we brought this brisa to tell you who's Rebbe, who's Rabbanan, then the Gemara explains. The Gemara doesn't understand the reisha to the sefer. What's this case of the tree that we're talking about? The reisha is obviously talking about that there is a width of 4 tvachim. That's why above 10 tvachim it's going to be aser, because if it didn't have a width of 4 tvachim, then it would be a karmelis. It wouldn't be problematic. So obviously it has a width of 4 tvachim. Problem is, the sefer obviously is that there's no width of 4 tvachim, because if it did, then how would it help with a basket? Oh, so you're right. The first interpretation says that the basket completes it to a width of 4 tvachim, but it doesn't have a width of 4 tvachim in the tree itself. And Rebbe holds like two different tanoim. He holds like Remei that you'll say chaykin lahashlam, that virtually you'll view it as a mokum haba. Now, why do you even need it to be a mokum haba? Is because he holds like Rabbi Yehuda that the erev has to be in the mokum dalit. So you'll have the mokum dalit, but it won't make it into Rosh Hashanah, which the Gemara says. Where do we find Rabbi Yehuda? It's you stick a pole in Rosh Hashanah, you put the erev on top of it. If it has a height of 10 tefachim and a width of 4 tefachim, it's going to be a valid erev. Why? Because you have the area of 4 tefachim all around, going up ad lamala. So that's where you see the principle of Rabbi Yehuda. There has to be a gabi mokum adalid, because we said if it doesn't have, when we said which one is that, if it doesn't have a width of 4 tefachim, then it's not going to be effective. You see, because it has to have a width of 4 tefachim. We said in contrast, but let's say if it does not have a height of 10 tefachim, then for sure it's going to help, because then the two Eruvin mokum they're both in Rosh Hashanah. But one thing is, that's what we see, that's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, that it has to be al gabi mokum haba. Now, the Gemara says, seemingly it's not like Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara says, no, it could even be like Rabbi Yehuda, because although he says by the case of the pole, even though it's not a width of 4 tefachim, it's going to be considered as a Rosh Hashanah. The reason is because he says, El Yomi is Dalid. That sounds not like Rabbi Yehuda, where we're saying that it's not going to be Rosh Hashanah because it doesn't have on the bottom a width of 4 tefachim. He says no, because there, Hadra Mechitzasa, there by the pole and the basket on top, all you have to do is like just do one halacha virtual walls. It's surrounding it. Here it's Hadra Mechitzasa, and as Rashi explained, you're going to have 2 virtual walls, and that we're not going to say 2 halachas are virtual, and therefore it's not going to be effective. But then the Gemara brought a second interpretation of the Bryce. That actually Reisha and the Sefer are talking about that it's a width of 4 tefachim. Wait a second, a width of 4 tefachim. Why is the case of the basket making it any better? The basket is still going to be a Rosh Hashanah. Tais says chayru Rosh Hashanah, even though the Gedolim the Bokim, but it's a Rosh Hashanah. So how does it help? He says no, basket is different because you could bend it down. Since you can bend it and you could bring it into 10 tefachim, we view it as if it's in 10 tefachim. So therefore, they're both Rosh Hashanah. So then the Gemara says, wait a second. Then why is it different by Eruvin, where we don't say that halacha? Because we say that every time you make Erev Tchumen, why didn't you say that even though you didn't bring it over there, command the Amte, like as if you brought it over there? Why do you have to bring the Erev Tchumen to it until that? You could bring it, so you should do it as if you did. The Gemara says, really, we would. It's a gezer, it's a rabbinic decree because of the case of when Yom Tov is after Shabbos. When it's after Shabbos, you cannot bring it there on Shabbos. You can't bring it. So therefore, you wouldn't be able to say Yochel Aviv. But the problem is that no one's going to be bringing Tchumen anymore. I'm say, you make it, just have in mind, or it's good enough because I could bring it over there. There you don't have it, and therefore every time we said by Eruvin Tchumen you have to. But technically, the method would work. It's just because the one case that wouldn't that we said that every time you have to actually bring the Eruvin Tchumen where you are. Thank you for any time for hosting us.